Hey friends, it's Jen, and welcome to this episode of Good God Talks. The whole point of our podcast here is to help you experience daily life with God and to grow your habit of having these uncommon conversations with Him in everyday life moments. But I feel like it's important, at least every once in a while, to remind us all, me included, that God is still there even if we feel nothing. Now, we are made for life with Him, and that includes noticing Him and having a sense of Him, hearing Him speak and engage with us in our day to day lives. But we don't always feel Him or hear Him in the exact same way. And sometimes the maturing of our faith requires that we believe God, we trust what He says about Himself, even if we don't feel it. If you think back over hard circumstances in your life, there are times when it has been harder to trust what God says about Himself. It's harder when we're going through painful circumstances, when there's loss, when there's grief, when there's things that we don't understand, to believe our God who is beyond our understanding. It'd be a whole lot easier if He just explained Himself and He always showed up in the ways that we want Him to, but then He wouldn't be God. And so this easier path would be death, really, to us. But I want to talk about that today because sometimes when we're in wilderness, heavy, dark seasons, those are actually invitations for deeper trust. Our trust in God has to be independent of our feelings toward Him because otherwise our foundation would be on us, right? It would be on what I feel, I think, I perceive. Instead, it's trust in who God is, based on His character and His nature and what He says about Himself. Now, I want to focus our episode on those harder seasons. And I mentioned a dark night of the soul in the last episode. According to Richard Foster in his book, Celebration of Discipline, he describes a dark night of the soul as dryness, aloneness, and even lostness. Any overdependence on the emotional life is stripped away. The notion, often heard today, that such experiences like this should be avoided and that we should always live in peace and comfort and joy and celebration only betrays the fact that much contemporary experience is surfacey. He calls it surface slush. The dark night is one of the ways God brings us into a hush, a stillness, so that He may work an inner transformation upon the soul. During these heavier times, Bible reading, sermons, intellectual debate, even worship can fail to move or excite us. There's often this temptation to seek release and to blame everyone and everything else for an inner dullness that we might be experiencing. The preacher is such a bore. That worship service is too dull. We might look around for another church or a new experience to give us quote unquote spiritual goosebumps. But that is settling for the lesser thing. Foster exhorts us that God is lovingly drawing us away from every distraction so that we may see Him more clearly. He's not referring to the dullness of spiritual things that comes from sin or disobedience, but he's talking of the person who is seeking hard after God and harbors no known sin in his heart. And he references Psalm 50, verse 10, which I'll read for us in the NLT. It says, "Who among you fears the Lord and obeys His servant? If you are walking in darkness, without a ray of light, trust in the Lord and rely on your God." So in this verse, it shows us it's possible to fear, obey, and trust and rely on the Lord and still walk in darkness without any light. Even if God is not felt emotively in the same way that we typically experience Him, God, His kingdom, and His character remain unchanged. Our trust can rest in who He is, not in what we feel. Don't let the enemy use that as a lie against you, that God is far away. Ask God to search your heart, to show you any offensive ways. If there is cause to repent, to think again and choose differently, do that as God guides you. But don't mistake a sense of feelings as the only way that we can know He is near. We can know he is near because he tells us that he is. And sometimes we go through those seasons of not feeling him as much because he wants to offer us more faith and trust in him. At the end of every episode, I always leave us with a question to go ask God. And I'm going to do that again today, but I want to encourage you, even if you ask and God doesn't respond in the way that you would like him to, know that he is there with you. And this way of responding to him, by talking, by asking the question, by sitting with an awareness of him, looking to notice him, this is an act of faith too. And so our question today begins with statements of trust. God, I trust that you are there, even if I don't hear or feel you. I'm listening and trusting. Is there something more you want to share with me right now? Have a good talk.